So if you've been to the movies lately, or just generally been in the vicinity of planet Earth, you may have noticed that for the past several years, the Walt Disney Company has been systematically going through their back catalog of classic animated films and remaking them in live action to turn a quick profit, since, they've really been hurting in that department. These remakes started out innocent enough. In the 90s, there were just a couple of them. The first one was actually The Jungle Book. Yeah, I bet you completely forgot about that one. It's a pretty forgettable movie, honestly, if you've ever even heard of it, though it stars a whole bunch of people who are much more famous now. Next, there were the two 101 Dalmatians movies starring Glenn Close as Cruella de Vil. They both did pretty well financially, but that was about it in the Disney remake department until Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland movie in 2010, which made a zillion dollars for some reason, so now we're stuck with these things for the rest of time, or at least until Disney runs out of animated films to remake. Who am I kidding? Even when that happens, they'll just start remaking them. And if you think I'm joking, well, think again. They've already done it once with The Jungle Book, and Dalmatians isn't far behind. There's already a new version scheduled for next year starring Emma Stone as Cruella. Now look, I don't have any problem with remakes in a general sense. When there's a good reason to remake a film, or a good idea or inspiration to put a new spin on a film, I'm all for it. One of my favorite movies of all time is the 1982 film John Carpenter's The Thing, a remake of a 1951 film called The Thing from Another World, directed by Howard Hawks, which is a sci-fi horror classic in its own right. I'd consider this the perfect remake. Carpenter was a fan of the original movie, but it had become pretty dated by the 80s, so he was inspired to take the concept and apply his own creative vision and sensibilities to it while still paying homage to the original in several ways. Also, due to the much wider range of VFX available in 1982, the remake was able to stick much closer to the plot of the original short story that the first film was based on. As a result, Carpenter's version of The Thing, despite sharing the same basic premise, is a totally different animal than Hawks' version and stands out as a different viewing experience entirely. However, The Thing was remade again in 2011. I guess it was more of like a soft reboot/sequel than it was a remake, but whatever. The point is that this time around the new film was a wholesale ripoff of the 82 version, with no interesting new angle to tell the story from. It's virtually the exact same film, only with an inferior script, performances, and heaps of atrocious CGI replacing the 82 version's legendary practical effects. I bring up The Thing because it's sort of a microcosm of the different directions you can go when retelling an older story as a new film. The 51 version had to make concessions and work around the limitations of adapting its source material for a new medium. The 82 version took an outdated movie and breathed new creative life into it so it could be enjoyed by a whole new generation. And finally, the 2011 version is a soulless cash grab with nothing new or interesting to contribute, and only exists because market research indicated that nostalgia for the 82 film would be enough to turn a profit on a remake. It wasn't. Now then, back to Disney. The problem with most of these movies is that they fall squarely into the third category, and of those that don't, only Christopher Robin was really any good. It is actually really good, though. If you haven't seen that one, I'd highly recommend checking it out. The others range from atrocious to ambitious but mediocre. Some of these movies might not be all that bad, but not one of them ever approaches the quality of their originals. The majority of what sets them apart at all are their flaws, so there's just no reason I would ever choose to watch any of them over the original after seeing them once to sate my curiosity.
There is a lot of gray area.
The only excuse these movies even have to justify themselves creatively is the fact that they're being presented in live action, which brings me to another problem I have. The majority of these concepts are just not suited to live action. At least not the way Disney is choosing to tackle them, where every single element has to be exactly the same as it was in the cartoons. The worst offender here is, of course, The Lion King, which is literally just a different type of cartoon, only with photorealistic talking animals, which also happens to be the movie's biggest problem because photorealistic talking animals just look bizarre. Now with that in mind, let's look to the future. There's been a lot of talk lately about a Little Mermaid remake, so is that movie going to feature a bunch of photorealistic CGI talking fish or a singing, dancing Jamaican crab? Because that sort of thing works just fine in a cartoon, but for some reason I just can't picture it looking good in live action. If not that, what's the alternative? A bunch of cartoony looking fish interacting with people like the Pokemon and Detective Pikachu? Nah, you know what? I'm betting betting they're gonna go for a more grounded, realistic version of The Little Mermaid. Maybe a little bit closer to the plot of the book, you know, where Ariel dies at the end.
Les poissons, les poissons.
Or, okay, how about this Lady and the Tramp movie coming out on Disney Plus, or the 101 Dalmatians remake? Are those movies going to have CGI dogs, or will they be like real trained dogs but with CGI mouths flapping up and down so we can hear Zac Efron or Jimmy Fallon or Zendaya's voices coming out of them? Or will they leave the dogs silent like they did in the first Dalmatians remakes? Somehow I doubt it. Just please, for the love of God, no more photorealistic talking CGI animal movies, I beg of you. I don't want to see The Fox and the Hound, or The Rescuers, or The Aristocrats, or The Great Mouse Detective, or Oliver and Company, or The Emperor's New Groove, or Brother Bear, or Furry Robin Hood, or Bambi done in live action. Oh, for fuck's sake. Will the live-action Pinocchio be a realistic-looking, human-sized CGI puppet? Because that's horrifying. I guess Stitch will definitely be a little cartoon Pokemon thing. That's fine, I guess, whatever. Also, apparently there's 2 different movies coming out based on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. No doubt the first 2 films in the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs cinematic universe. I really wish I was joking about that, but no, I shit you not. There's also a Prince Charming spin-off called Charming in the works as well. This is really happening. Just think of the endless possibilities. Each dwarf could get their very own trilogy of spin-off films, all leading up to the epic crossover Dwarf Vengers Endgame, coming to a theater near you July 2035. Don't forget about the live-action Peter Pan spin-off film Tinkerbell coming to Disney Plus, or the Aladdin Will Smith Genie prequel Genies. Oh god, what even is this? It legitimately sounds like a bad joke. On top of everything else, the rate at which Disney's been pumping these things out lately is just obnoxious. At the very least, I wish they would limit themselves to 1 per year. Within a 5-month period, there have been not 1, not 2, but 3 of these movies, with another 2 releasing before the end of 2019. Like, come on, Disney, give us a moment, for pity's sake. You've already got the likes of Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and a whole plethora of other stuff making you money hand over fist, to say nothing of the endless supply of merchandise or theme park attendance. But okay, this is getting overly negative, so even at the risk of severely dating the video, I'd like to express some hopes for the future as well. While I would prefer that they stopped making these movies entirely and focus their efforts on original projects, the fact is that isn't going to happen anytime soon. So since we're going to be getting most of these anyway, the Mulan remake does look like it's something that will, for better or worse, be able to stand apart from the original on its own 2 feet. They're nixing all the supernatural elements like Mushu or Mulan's ghost ancestors, as well as all of the songs, and seem to be converting it into more of a period piece action movie. I'm cautiously optimistic about this, even though the cynical part of my brain says that the only reason these changes are being made in the first place is because musicals don't tend to be popular in China. A remake of The Sword and the Stone could also be pretty good. The original is actually one of my favorite Disney movies, but I think this is the type of story that could translate well into live action. I do believe there's a lot of potential in adapting The Once and Future King for a modern young audience, just as long as they rein themselves in and the film doesn't feature Merlin played by Will Ferrell with John C. Reilly as Archimedes and the 2 of them spouting constant intrusive pop culture references at each other. The same goes for The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The animated Hunchback movie is one of those from the Disney Renaissance years that I'm actually kind of torn on. A lot of the movie works quite well, but like others, I think that the story is severely hindered by most of the more comedic and cartoony elements. I could see this story working as a more straightforward, melodramatic musical, even if its themes and tone are somewhat detached from the book that the story is actually based on. A remake in the same vein as the original that lightens up just a bit on the comedy has the potential to be something worth watching, at least. There are a few other Disney movie concepts that didn't quite land with audiences the first time around, which I think could be given second legs in live action. The Black Cauldron would probably be at the top of the pile in this category for me, since I think the original is unknown enough at this point for it to fly under the radar and not market itself as a remake at all. For what it's worth, I do remember really liking the book series when I was a kid. I don't know, maybe I'm just partial to medieval fantasy.
You're quite right!
Speaking of medieval fantasy, if we're remaking all these other Disney cartoons in live action, how about a Gargoyles movie? Pretty please? That would be awesome. In the meantime, we'll just have to wait and see, but if you like this video, you'd be helping me out a lot if you could hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date on all of my future stuff. Leave a comment down below with any of your thoughts on this Disney remake phenomenon, and check out some of the other great stuff I've got up here on this channel. Until next time, thanks so much to all of you guys for watching, and take care.